This is the third part of the lecture for English 1, Week 18. So now we're going to move on to diagramming infinitives. Last week we talked about diagramming gerunds, and now we'll look at infinitives. You really are going to need to study pages 137 and page 140 so that you can learn how to do this. So turn in your book now to page 140. Okay, here's an example of what we did last week. Fishing is Logan's main occupation. Notice how the subject, fishing, is put up on the stilts, and since this is a gerund, we use the little steps to place the gerund on the steps. Notice also that we have a predicate nominative, so our line between the verb and the predicate nominative is slanted towards the subject. Now this slide shows the difference in how we diagram gerunds versus infinitives. As we learned last week, gerunds go up on the stilts, on the little steps. Infinitives, however, still go up on the stilts, but the lines that we use, they're kind of similar to how we diagram a prepositional phrase. But again, it's up on top of the stilts. So in our sentence here, to visit Hawaii would be delightful. My subject is to visit. So that's an infinitive, so it has to go up on the stilts. My verb is would be, and then I have a predicate adjective, which gets diagrammed the same way with a slanted line as a predicate nominative. Here's another example, this time where our infinitive is again a noun, serving this time as the predicate nominative. So it gets put in the place of the predicate nominative, but because it's an infinitive, it has to go up on the stilts. Okay, I want to review again the confusion that often comes with the word to, because sometimes it's a preposition and other times it's part of an infinitive. In this sentence, he went to the store. To is a preposition, and the phrase to the store is a prepositional phrase. Store is acting as a noun. It's a place that he went to. Another sentence, he went to store the boxes in the attic. Again, we have the word to, and we have the word store, but this time they're working together to form an infinitive, which is a verbal. It's not a prepositional phrase. Store isn't a noun, it's a verbal. So hopefully you understand the difference here between these two, that to can be a preposition or it can be part of an infinitive. Okay, let's go back and look at some more diagramming here. The sentence, I wanted nothing except to sleep. Except is a preposition. The infinitive to sleep is acting as a noun and acting as the object of the preposition. We diagram the subject, the verb, the direct object, and then underneath that we have our preposition, and then on the line where we put the object of the preposition, we have an infinitive. Okay, here's our next sentence. We like to travel. I want you on a piece of paper to diagram this sentence. What you're going to need to do is to pause the video, complete your diagram, and then start the video again, and I'll show you the answer. Okay, here's what your diagram should look like. We have the subject, we, the verb, like, and then to travel is our direct object. Because it's an infinitive, it has to go up on the stilts. Okay, here's the next one. His goal to hit 70 home runs was not realistic. Pause your video, diagram the sentence, and then start it again to see if you got it right. Okay, here's the answer for this one. Again, or this time, the infinitive, to hit, is the appositive of the sentence. So it gets placed right next to the noun that it's describing, which this time is the subject goal, and we put the parentheses around it. Again, also notice that realistic is a predicate adjective, so the line is slanted between was and realistic. Okay, here's the first sentence on your in-class practice sheet. To err is human. Go ahead and try diagramming this one. Again, pause the video, and when you're done diagramming, start it up again. Here's the answer for that one. To err is the infinitive serving as the subject. It has to go up on the stilts because it's an infinitive. Human is the predicate nominative because we have a linking verb, and to err is the same or equal as human. Okay, so now we understand how to diagram infinitives. This gets a little bit more complicated, just like it did last time, because we have to talk about infinitive phrases. Remember that a phrase is a group of related words that does not contain a subject or a verb. Remember, a gerund phrase consisted of the gerund plus any complements or modifiers. Well, in the same way, an infinitive phrase is going to consist of an infinitive plus any complements or modifiers that it would have. Okay, well, let's look at a sentence with an infinitive phrase. To buy Mr. Thompson a present will be difficult. Okay, the verb in my sentence is will be, and I have a predicate adjective, difficult. But when you ask the question, what will be? To buy Mr. Thompson a present will be. That whole phrase is serving as the subject. Because it begins with an infinitive, to buy, that infinitive phrase is the subject. You'll notice, just like with gerund phrases, we can have complements or modifiers within it. For example, the direct object is a present. To buy what? A present. To buy a present for whom? Mr. Thompson. So Mr. Thompson is the indirect object in the infinitive phrase which serves as the subject of our sentence. Now let's look at how we would diagram that. Again, our verb and our predicate adjective are pretty easy. But our subject here is an infinitive phrase. The whole thing has to go up on the stilts. We have to buy, which is our infinitive. Our direct object is present, so it gets the straight line up and down. And then remember, an indirect object is placed normally below the verb, but we don't have a verb, so we place it below the verbal, and we do that as shown there and put Mr. Thompson on the line. Now remember that if it's in the box, it's on the stilts. Just like we did with gerund phrases, we do that here with infinitive phrases. So all the words that are in the box are up on the stilts of the infinitive phrase. Okay, here's another sentence using an infinitive phrase. The best idea is to be submissive to God's will. I have a linking verb here, and that tells me that I probably am going to have a predicate nominative. And indeed I do. The entire infinitive phrase, to be submissive to God's will, that whole phrase is serving as the predicate nominative. It's telling me, or it's equal to what the idea is. You'll notice that within the infinitive phrase, I have my infinitive, and then the word submissive is a predicate adjective. Let's look at how we diagram this. My subject is idea, my verb is, and the whole thing is serving as a predicate nominative, so I have the slanted line. Now everything in my box is going to be up on my stilts, my infinitive, to be, and then the predicate adjective with the slanted line, submissive. Okay, let's look at another one here. The doctor asked them to wait outside the room. Okay, outside the room is a prepositional phrase. We can start by crossing that out. My subject is doctor. My verb is asked. The doctor asked what? Them to wait outside the room. That whole thing is the infinitive phrase, and this time it's acting as the direct object. Now, When we have an infinitive phrase that acts as a direct object, it gets a little more complicated because sometimes, but not always, sometimes that infinitive phrase can have a subject. Now you're saying, wait, I thought phrases couldn't have subjects and verbs. Well, they can have a subject, but not a subject and a verb. So this infinitive phrase has as its subject them, because it sort of answers the question, who is to wait? And while to wait is not the verb, it is a verbal, so it kind of has some similarities in a phrase like this. So now we've added something new because we have a subject in our infinitive phrase. Well, notice we have our subject and verb of the main sentence the same, and then this is all the direct object up on the stilts. We diagram the infinitive the same way, but then we sort of back up and put the subject with the vertical line going all the way down between the subject and the infinitive. Okay, let's try another one here. Her goal to become a writer was soon realized. Subject is goal, verb, a linking verb is was, realized is our predicate adjective. But this time we have an appositive. Our infinitive phrase, to become a writer, is an appositive. The infinitive is to become, and since the word become is sometimes a linking verb, writer is a predicate nominative rather than a direct object. I know this is getting confusing, but you need to follow along with that. Since become is sometimes a linking verb, then our verbal to become gets a predicate nominative rather than a direct object. Here's what the diagram of that sentence looks like. Again, this is in a positive, so it goes right next to the subject because that's what it's talking about. It's up on the stilts, and since writer is the predicate nominative, the line is slanted back between the words become and writer. Okay, one more and another exception or complication to the rule here. Here's my sentence. He does everything except stain the bookcase. Now, this one is a little hard to recognize the infinitive because sometimes the word to, T-O, can be omitted before the infinitive. As it is in this case, it's omitted before the word stain. Now, it would make sense to say he does everything except to stain the bookcase, but we don't say that. But you kind of have to recognize that. So in this case, we have an infinitive phrase following the preposition except, and that infinitive phrase is acting as the object of the preposition. In this infinitive phrase, we have a direct object, bookcase. So bookcase is the direct object of the infinitive phrase that's serving as the object of the preposition in my sentence. Okay, here's how you would diagram this. My subject, verb, direct object, everything is the direct object of the main sentence. Then I have my preposition except. Then the object of the preposition is what's in the box, so all of it goes up on the stilts. Since the word to, T-O, is not in my sentence, I use that X there on the line to show that the word wasn't present in the sentence. And then the word bookcase is the direct object of my infinitive phrase, so it's up on the stilts as well.